Hello everyone, welcome to the International Strategic Management class. We are now moving to the chapter 5. We're going to unveil how we could create and sustain competitive advantage through business level strategy. So remember in the previous three chapters, we have focused on the analysis of the external and internal environment of the firm. So in this chapter, let us give emphasis on the formulation of strategies at the business level. Since the business level is where competition takes place, a firm's performance at this level is vital to its overall success. For this chapter, we have three learning objectives. First, let us understand the central role of competitive advantage in the study of strategic management and the three generic stages: the cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. Let us describe each of these strategies and provide examples of firms that have successfully used them to outperform rivals. Secondly, let us familiarize ourselves with the impacts of the three generic strategies, improving the firm's relative power vis-a-vis the five forces that determine an industry's average. And lastly, how firms can effectively combine the generic strategies to determine its sustainability. It will also cover the stages of the life cycle that have an important implication for a firm's relative emphasis on functional capabilities and value-creating activities. It also discusses the turnaround strategies which enable a firm to reposition its competitive position in an industry and how such strategies can lead to sustainable advantages. How firms compete with each other and how they attain and sustain competitive advantages go to the heart of strategic management. In short, the key issue becomes, why do some firms outperform others and enjoy such advantages over time? So this subject, business level strategy, is the focus of this chapter. After understanding the internal environment and the external environment, and you could be able to assess what the company's strength, potential, capacity, and what could be the best way to anticipate some of the problem that might happen in the future and in the environment. Okay, it is about time that the company or the firm could be able to formulate a strategy. The introductory case in learning from mistakes in our book at the page 139, the A&P was the first traditional supermarket operator in the United States. With its roots going back to 1859, they have operated over 4,200 stores. So the case discusses the decline of A&P from being the first successful supermarket chain into a bankrupt business. The example highlights the need to reinvest and reinforce a firm's cost leadership and differentiation, a course of action A&P failed to do. The question of what decisions did A&P should make, okay, when it was successful that led to its later failure, is directing to the business level strategy. Business level strategy is a strategy designed for a firm or a division of the firm that competes within a single business. How to overcome the five forces and how they can achieve competitive advantage. Michael Porter had suggested three generic strategies. When we say generic strategies, these are the basic types of business level strategies based on the breed of target market, industry-wide versus a narrow-wide market, and the type of competitive advantage, low cost, scale versus uniqueness. Michael Porter presented three generic strategies that firms can use to overcome the five forces and attain competitive advantage. The first, overall cost leadership, is based on creating a low-cost position relative to one's peers. The second, differentiation, requires that the firm or business units um, must create products and or services that are unique and valued. And lastly, firms following a focus strategy must direct their attention or their focus toward narrow product lines, buyer groups, or geographical markets. Remember, firms emphasizing a focus strategy must attain advantages either through differentiation or a cost leadership approach. In Exhibit 5.1, it illustrates these strategies on two dimensions: competitive advantage and market serve. For our competitive advantage, we have two indicators: the low cost position and the superior perceived value by customer. For our market serve, we have two indicators, the broad target market and the narrow target market. So if your position is in low cost and you have a broad target market, the strategy that you can use is the overall cost leadership. And if the position of the company is in the superior perceived value by customer with a broad target market, you can use broad differentiation. If the firm's position is in low cost but with a narrow target market, you could use the combination of cost and focus strategy. If the position of the firm is in superior perceived value by customer with a narrow target market, you can use the combination of differentiation and focus strategy. Now let us clearly define one by one the three generic strategies. When we say overall cost leadership, this is based on you create a product at low cost position. Okay, how are you going to do that? By managing the relationship throughout the value chain. Okay, you lower down the cost of the materials, but of course without sacrificing the quality of the product. The second generic strategy is differentiation. So it implies that you are going to make your product unique and different from the existing product in the market. So obviously, you could expect here that it emphasizes on the non-price attributes, okay? Because some of the customers are gladly are willing to pay the premium price. And the third generic strategy is that you create a product, you make a strategy depending on your market segments. Okay, you target set a particular geographic market. You focus, okay, in a particular product line, okay, either using differentiation or cost leadership. Before moving on the discussion of each of the generic strategies, it is useful to point out that a variety of research has supported the notion that firms that identify with one or more forms of competitive advantage typically outperform those that do not. Exhibit 5.2 provides evidence that businesses that combine multiple forms of competitive advantage were more successful than those using only a single form. And the lowest performer, when those that were stuck in the middle, that is 4.4, that is, they do not identify with a single type of strategy. That is why it is very important for the firm to decide what kind of competitive advantage strategy that they have to implement and formulate. Let us now discuss each of the types of generic strategies. The first generic strategy is the overall cost leadership A firm's generic strategy based on appeal to the industry-wide market using a competitive advantage based on low cost. Cost leadership requires a high and a tight set of interrelated tactics, including close scrutiny of the value chain. If you're going to open your book at the page 142, the exhibit 5.3, it shows the value chain concept to provide examples on how a firm can attain an overall cost leadership strategy in its primary and support activities. Example, for the firm infrastructure, they have a few management layers to reduce overhead costs, and they standardize accounting practices to minimize personnel required. For the human resource management, they minimize costs associated with employee turnover through effective policies, and they provide an effective orientation and training programs to maximize employee productivity. In terms of primary activities in inbound logistics, they effectively lay out the receiving DAC operations, and in the operations they had implemented effective use of quality control inspector to minimize reworks, and for the outbound logistics they implemented effective utilization of delivery fleet. So those are some of the examples that you can see in the value chain activities for overall cost leadership. Lowering down the cost of your product is not an easy task. It requires an experience. So we call it the experience curve. So experience curve is the decline in unit cost of production as cumulative output increases. A business can learn to lower costs as it's gain experience with production processes. So along the operation, you will know which area to lower down the cost. Among those common factors producing the experience curve are workers getting better at what they do, product designs being simplified as the product matures, and production process being automated and streamlined. However, experience curve gains will only be the foundation for a cost advantage if the firm knows the source of the cost reduction and keep those gains proprietary. This strategy also requires competitive parity. So this is a firm's achievement of similarity or being on par with competitors with respect to low cost, differentiation, or other strategic product characteristics. Competitive parity on the basis of differentiation permits the cost leader to translate cost advantages directly into higher profits than competitors. Thus, the cost leader earns above average return. A business that strives for a low-cost advantage must attain an absolute cost advantage relative to its rival. So this is typically accomplished by offering a no-frills product or unnecessary extra expenses for the services to broad target market using standardization to derive the greatest benefits from economies of scale and experience. However, such a strategy may fail if the firm is unable to attain parity on important dimensions of differentiation, such as quick responses to customer requests for services or design changes. Okay, parity means it is the state or condition of being equal, for clarification. How generic strategies can improve this relative position vis-a-vis the five forces. Remember, an overall low-cost position enables the firm to achieve above-average returns despite strong competition. It protects a firm against rivalry from competitors because lower costs allow a firm to earn returns even if its competitors eroded their profits through intense rivalry. Buyers can exert power to drive down prices only to the level of the next most efficient producer because there are relatively few competitors that can provide a comparable cost or value proposition. Because the cost advantage can be applied across all operations, a low-cost position puts the firm in a favorable position with respect to substitute products introduced by new and existing competitors. One of the good example is the Spirit Airlines successful cost leadership. Spirit Airline is a controversial and successful firm in the highly competitive and open, unprofitable airlines industry. So what they had done is they keeps their firm infrastructure as small as possible. They had limited marketing effort for around like 2.5 million in a year, and it flies only two models of airplane, Airbus 319 and 320. They remove a flight magazine from the planes, and it charges customers for both checked and carry-on luggage. So that is a specific example of cost leadership. What are some of the danger or hazard or pitfalls of cost leadership? Firms need to pay attention to all activities in the value chain. Managers should explore all value chain activities, including relationships among them, as candidates for cost reduction. Firms can also be vulnerable to price increases in the factors of production. A firm's strategy may consist of value-creating activities that are easy to imitate. Firms striving to attain cost leadership advantages must obtain a level of parity on differentiation. Building a low-cost advantage often requires significant investment in plant and equipment distribution systems and large economically scaled operations. As a result, firms often find that this investment limits their flexibility. As a result, also, they have difficulty responding to changes in the environment. Ultimately, the foundation of the firm's cost advantage may become obsolete. In these circumstances, other firms develop new ways of cutting costs, leaving the old cost leaders at a significant disadvantage. Okay, that's why it's very important that you are updated of what's happening in your environment. So if you could take a look on what happened with the case of General Motors and Ford, okay, they weren't able to anticipate the flow of changes and the new system that had been used by their competitors. Let's move on to the second generic strategy. As the name implies, differentiation consists of creating differences in the firm's products or service offerings by creating something that is perceived industry-wide as being unique and valued by customers. Differentiation can take many forms such as prestige or brand image, technology, innovation, features, customer service, or dealer networks. For example, with your strategy spotlight in your book, page 153, commercial airlines find themselves in a very competitive market, facing a number of competitors, having high fixed costs, and experiencing demand that is largely driven by economic condition. So what they had done is they separate the value of the actual flight from the services associated with flying. By then, airlines were able to greatly expand the profit pool associated with flying. So firms achieve and sustain differentiation advantages and attain above average performance when their price premiums exceed the extra costs incurred of being unique. What are the different requirements for differentiation strategy? Firms achieve and sustain differentiation advantages and attain above average performance when their price premiums exceed the extra cost incurred in being unique. But a differentiator cannot ignore costs. Differentiators must reduce costs in all areas that do not affect differentiation. As with overall cost leadership strategies, parity on the other dimension of strategy becomes very important. That is, firms following differentiation strategies must strive to attain a degree or level of parity on cost. Example of these firms who had used this kind of strategy are Hotel Monaco and BMW Automobiles. Okay, they had used their image and brand identification. Next is the Nordstrom department store. They had used customer service. Another good example is Porsche. An example of how differentiators can look to differentiate on key dimensions that customers value but look to manage costs in areas in which customers put less emphasis. How to improve competitive position vis-a-vis the five forces using differentiation. Differentiation provides protection against rivalry since brand loyalty lowers customer sensitivity to price and raises customer switching costs, therefore creating higher entry barriers and reducing the threat from substitute. The resulting higher margins and the lack of comparable alternatives avoids the need for a low-cost position. What are the danger or hazard or pitfalls of a differentiation? It's not enough just to be different. A differentiation strategy must provide unique bundles of products and or services that customers value highly. Firms may also strive for quality of service that is higher than customers desire. Thus, they become vulnerable to competitors who provide an appropriate level of quality at a lower price. In addition, customers may desire the products but are repelled by the price premium. So when we say repelled, this is like it drives or force, okay, the firm or the customer to buy the product with a high price. Differentiation advantages can be eroded through imitation. Firms may also erode their quality brand image by adding products or services with lower price and less quality, thus confusing the customer. Companies must also realize that although they may perceive their products and services as differentiated, their customers may view them as commodities. That's why you consider a lot of counterfeiting cases in international product. You can buy Louis Vuitton in class A, class B, class C, and some dress, Gucci, Lacoste in a class A and class B type of materials. Companies must also realize that although they may perceive their products and services as differentiated, their customers may vary or may view them as commodities. The third generic strategy is based on the choice of a narrow competitive scope within an industry. The focuser attains competitive advantages by designing itself to a segment or group of segments and tailor its strategy to serving them. The essence of focus is the exploitation of a particular market niche. Focus strategy has two variants. A narrow focus by itself is not sufficient for above average performance. Firms must choose either a cost or differentiation focus, but both variants of the focus strategy rely on providing better service than broad-based competitors who are trying to serve the focuser's target segment. Cost focus exploits differences in cost behavior in some segments, while differentiation focus exploits the special needs of buyers in other segments. So if you could take a look, the strategy spotlight 5.3, the examples of a luxury good providers, wherein Yux, an Italian firm, okay, they found out how they're going to utilize e-commerce, okay, into a luxury experience. How they had translated the luxury retail experience to the online world. First, they create a right experience cut across the value chain. They decide the website specifically to the brand, and then secondly, they focus on the details, like they use 60 photographers to create images for each product. Third is they develop innovative algorithms to predict which products will sell at which times and which geographic region. And lastly, Hughes has insisted on exclusive contracts with luxury brands to ensure that it can control the brand image in the online retail space. How to improve competitive position vis-a-vis the five forces using focus. Focus requires that a firm either have a low-cost position with its strategic target, high differentiation, or both. These positions provide defenses against each competitive force because of higher margins or more specialized products or services. Focus strategies also used to select niches that are least vulnerable to substitute for where competitors are weaker. What are the danger or hazard or pitfalls of focus? The advantages of a cost-focused strategy may be fleeting if the cost advantage are eroded over time. Fleeting means lasting for a very short period. University of Phoenix is given an example to this chapter. Some firms adopting a focus strategy may enjoy temporary advantages because they select a small niche with few rivals. However, this strategy can be imitated. And finally, some firms attempting to attain advantages through a focused strategy may have too narrow a product or service. How about combining two different strategies to achieve competitive advantage? Firms' integrations of various strategies can provide multiple types of value to customers. A combination low-cost and differentiation strategy enables a firm to provide two types of value to customer. Differentiated abilities, example, high quality, brand identification, and reputation, and lower prices because of the firm's lower cost in value creating activities. For example, superior quality can lead to lower cost because of less need for rework in manufacturing, fewer warranty claims, a reduced need for customer service personnel to resolve customer complaints, and so forth. So when you produce a good quality, the tendency is less customer complaint and less after service. That's why combination strategy could be another option, okay, to achieve competitive advantage. So this is the firm's integration or combining of various strategies to provide multiple unique products in small quantities at low cost. What are the different forms of combination strategy? So we have automated and flexible manufacturing system using data analytics and exploiting the profit pool concept for competitive advantage. Mass customization is a firm's ability to manufacture unique products in small quantities at low cost. So this is facilitated by advances in manufacturing technologies like CAD, CAM. So CAD, it stands for Computer Aided Design, and for the CAM, Computer Aided Manufacturing. Understand windows is given as an example. Analysis of data on customer characteristics, purchasing patterns, employee productivity, and physical asset utilization allows firms to better serve customer while more efficiently using company resources. For the profit pool, the total profits in an industry at all points along the industry value chain, that is profit pool. So the structure on the profit pool can be complex. The potential pool of profits will be deeper in some segments of the value chain than others, and the depths will vary within an individual segment. Segment profitability may vary widely by customer group, product category, geographic market, or distribution channel. Additionally, the pattern of profit concentration in an industry is often very different from the pattern of revenue generation. Many firms have also achieved success by integrating activities throughout the extended value chain by using information technology to link their own value chains with the value chains of their customer and suppliers. How to improve competitive position vis-a-vis the five forces using combination. Firms that successfully integrate both differentiation and cost advantages creates an inviable position. Inviable means it would create or trigger some envy from the competitors. This dominant competitive position serves to erect high entry barriers to potential competitors that have neither the financial nor physical resources to compete head to head. The organization's larger size can provide enormous bargaining power over suppliers. Low pricing and wide selection can reduce the power of buyers because there are relatively few competitors that can provide a comparable cost or value proposition. This is the overall value proposition also makes potential substitute products a less viable threat. So Walmart is a good example of this kind of strategy. What are the danger or the pitfalls of combination strategies? A key issue in strategic management is the creation of competitive advantages that enable the firm to enjoy above average returns. Some firms may become stuck in the middle if they try to attain both cost and differentiation advantage. While integrating activities across firms' value chain, firms must consider the expenses linked to technology and investment, managerial time and commitment, and the involvement and investment required by the firm's customer and supplier. The firm must be confident that it can generate a sufficient scale of operations and revenues to justify all associated expenses. Finally, firms may fail to accurately assess sources of revenue and profits in their value chain. Now, let's take a look on the importance of industry life cycle stages in formulating a strategy. When we say industry life cycle, these are the stages of introduction, growth, maturity, and decline that typically occur over the life of an industry. Managers must become even more aware of their firm's strength and weakness in many areas to attain competitive advantages. Okay? The factors such as generic strategies, market growth rate, intensity of competition, and overall objectives can change over the courses of industry life cycle. Managers must strive to emphasize the key functional areas during each of the four stages and to attain a level of parity in all functional areas and value. Take note, Products and services go through many cycles of innovation and renewal. Typically, only food products have a single life cycle. So when we say food product, these are products that has a very brief life cycle. They rises quickly in popularity, but then declines about as quickly. Example is hula hoop, pet rock, Pokemon, the yo-yo and the beanie babies. Maturity stages of an industry can be transformed or followed by the stage of rapid growth. If consumer tastes change, technological innovations take place, or new developments occur. So this is the complete picture of stages of industry life cycle. So you could see here also the different factor like generic strategies, market growth rate, number of segments, intensity of competition, emphasis on product design, emphasis on process design, major functional areas of concern, and the overall objective. So you can see in different stages, they vary, okay? They vary the effectivity of this kind of is strategy. For example, for generic strategy, so if your firm is in introduction stage, you might use differentiation. If you are already in the growth, you may sustain the differentiation strategy. But for maturity stage, you can now use differentiation, overall cost leadership, and for the decline, you can now use overall cost leadership or focus. And we're going to discuss them one by one. In the introduction stage, products are unfamiliar to consumers, market segments are not well defined, and product features are not clearly specified. The early development of an industry typically involves low sales growth, rapid technology change, operating losses, and the need for the strong source of cash to finance operations. Since there are few players and not much growth, competition tends to be limited. There's an advantage to being a first mover in the market. Okay, so like what Coca-Cola had done, having a global brand, and Caterpillar's ability to get a lock on overseas sales channels and service capabilities. So the particular strategies is that uh, they develop a product and gets users to try it, and they generate exposure so the product becomes a standard. So they're going to set the first move, or giving them the first or the right standard of the product. The second stage of the industry life cycle is the growth. It is characterized by strong increases in sales, and the potential for strong sales and profits attracts other rivals who also want to benefit. Whereas marketing and sales initiatives were mainly directed at spurring aggregate demand, that is, demand for all such products in the introduction stage. Efforts in the growth stage are directed toward stimulating selective demand, in which a firm's product offerings are chosen with those of its rival. So at this stage, revenues in the growth it increases at an accelerating rate because number one, new consumers are trying to buy the product, and growing proportion of satisfied customers are making repeat purchases. So in general, new products and services often fail if they are relatively few repeat purchases. What are the particular strategies? So it can create branded differentiated products, it simulates selective demand, and provide financial resource to support value chain activities. In the third stage, maturity, aggregate industry demand begins to slow. Since markets are becoming saturated, there are few opportunities to attract new adopters because it is no longer possible to grow around competition. Direct competition becomes more predominant, and competition intensifies it often on the basis of price. For example, with the intense competition between Unilever and Procter and Gamble in the laundry soap business. So this slow growth business in the maturity stage puts enormous pressure on both players to make even small gains in market share. Also, given the slow growth, all gains are essentially at the rival's expense since there are few unexplored niches to exploit. So what could be the possible strategies? Firms can affect consumers' mental shifts through a reverse positioning, like a break in industry tendency to continuously augment products, and also the characteristics of the product life cycle by offering products with fewer product attributes and lower price, and or it can improve products along specific dimensions. So they can offer products that are still in the industry but that are perceived by customers as being different. Decisions in the decline phase of industry life cycle become particularly important. Hard choice must be made and firms must face up to the fundamental strategic choices of either exiting or staying and attempting to consolidate the industry. There are four basic strategies available in decline phase: maintaining, harvesting, exiting, or consolidating. So for the maintaining, so you keep the product going without significantly reducing marketing support, technological development, or other investment in the hope that competitors will eventually leave the market. For harvesting, it involves obtaining as much profit as possible and requires that costs in the decline stage be decreased quickly. For exiting, the market involves dropping or just quit, okay, the product from a firm's portfolio. Next is consolidating. It involves one firm acquiring the best of the surviving firms in the industry at a reasonable price. Okay, so like for example, the Lockheed Martin, the giant in the defense industry, and also like Coca-Cola and some other company also owned by Warren Buffett. So if you're familiar with the American businessman, okay, what he is doing is more merging and acquiring a lot of businesses. Is another strategy that we can use to achieve company competitive advantage is the turnaround strategy. This is a strategy that reverses a firm's decline in performance and returns its growth and profitability. The need for turnaround may occur at any stage in the life cycle, but is more likely to occur during maturity or decline. Most turnarounds require a firm to carefully analyze the external and internal environment. The external analysis leads to identification of market segments and customers group that may still find the product attractive. Internal analysis results in actions aimed at reduced costs and higher efficiency. A specific case study that is applicable for these turnaround strategies is the case of Ford and the case of Jamba Juice, for how CEOs tried to revamp the product line and put the company on the path to profitability. And that is the end of our discussion. I hope that we could be able to achieve our goal on understanding the different strategies, okay, or the generic strategies that we may use so that we could be able to achieve our company competitive advantage. As a manager, it is very important for us to know a particular business level strategy because this will help us to decide on a particular actions that will put our firm into a competitive position. To wrap up, what we have discussed in the part 2 is formulation of strategy. So we mentioned that in business level strategy, the company should decide, okay, what could be the best solution to put the company in a better position. So we introduced the different types of competitive advantage and sustainability through overall cost leadership, differentiation, focus, and the combination strategies integrating overall low cost and differentiation. And also, we mentioned the different industry life cycle, and we mentioned also a particular strategies in every stages. So I hope that this information will help you and guide you to know specifically a particular strategies that you can use in your business. So if you have any further question, just send me a message and I will be much willing to answer all of your queries. Thank you everyone. This is your professor, Dr. Christine Joy Simpao. Have a nice day.